4th of July. My name is Grace Zimmerman. I'm Vice President and Program Chairman for Somers Historical Society. The Society was founded to celebrate and share the local history of Somers, and it's in that spirit that we put together this Independence Day program for the community. We hope you enjoy it, and we hope you have a very happy, healthy, and safe 4th of July.
Happy 4th of July, Somers. As we celebrate the 4th of July in what is a very unique, challenging circumstances, we must take a moment to appreciate the democracy that has been created by our founding fathers and guarded by generations before us. We must understand our democracy takes work to maintain and should never be taken for granted. Our generation has found itself with the responsibility of protecting this democracy in what could be arguably one of the most pivotal points in the history of America. We are better as a people, better as a democracy, and better as a community when we work towards one ideal. Happy 4th of July. Be safe and be well, Somers.
Hi, my name is Libby Baker, and I'm here at the Todd Cemetery on Route 100 in Somers. I'm a member of the Enoch Crosby chapter of the Daughters of the American Revolution. The following are the names of the Revolutionary War patriots from this area, which I would like to read in honor of them today, July 4th, 2020. Their military service has been documented by the DAR as part of its membership process. James Bailey, who married Anna Brown. Dr. Elias Cornelius, who married Rachel Spackler. Thaddeus Crane, who married Sarah Paddock and Lydia Reed Baxter. Samuel Dingy, who married Rebecca Merritt, and he's here in the Todd Cemetery. Benjamin Green, who married Margaret. Margaret was the second wife of Enoch Crosby. Nathaniel Paddock, who married Mary Crane. Gilbert Pinkney. Deliverance Purdy Jr., who married Susanna Dickens. John Reynolds, who married Rebecca Rundell. William T. Jr., who married Catherine Gregory and Anna Knox. Philip Van Cortlandt, who married Catherine de Pazer. Pierre Van Cortlandt, who married Joanna Livingston. And Stephen Van Tassel, who married Mary DeVere, and they are both here in the Todd Cemetery.
Another cemetery in Somers that has a historic significance is at Mount Zion Church. Mount Zion Church is located on Route 139. It's at the corner of the Reese Park recreation area. It has its connection to Carrie Wright Reese because her grandfather, Micaiah Wright, did build that church. It's a very old church, and standing at Mount Zion Church is a figure you'll probably recognize. He did visit a Somers on many occasions, and today he's got some wonderful words that really do apply to this year of 2020.
I bid you greetings on this solemn occasion of our great nation's Independence Day. My name is Bill Winnicky. I am a retired Somers teacher and have been associated with this wonderful town for the past 41 years. At the bequest of the Somers Historic Society, I've been asked to portray His Excellency George Washington and speak a few words on this occasion. 245 years ago, on June 19, 1775, Congress commissioned George Washington as commander of the Continental Forces. That summer, Washington would meet his troops up in Cambridge as they were surrounding British forces in Boston. 1,600 militia were gathered there, and Washington would transform that ragtag mob into some semblance of an army and drive 11,000 British troops from Boston. The following spring, Washington would move his army to New York in anticipation of Great Britain's next move. As events unfolded, Congress moved to declare independence on July 4th, 1776, in which the founding principles of our nation were penned to parchment. At that time, George Washington was headquartered in Lower Manhattan as he assembled 20,000 troops south of what we today know as Wall Street and in Brooklyn. His Excellency watched in dismay as he observed his green troops in shock and awe as 400 British ships, including 73 men of war vessels, invaded New York, carrying 33,000 British regulars and Hessian troops. On July 9th, the general would receive a copy of the Declaration of Independence that Congress issued days before. Regularly, the general would issue general orders to his officers directing the men of his orders for the day. General orders for that day really directed the men in two things. First, he would direct religious chaplains to be assigned to each regiment at the approval of the Congress. It was the general's hope that the men would have the protection of heaven and they would be inspired to fight and die for a just cause based on the principles that all men had dignity, that all men were created equal. General orders then, July 9th, 1776, from His Excellency. The Honorable Congress has been pleased to allow a chaplain to each regiment and to see that all inferior officers and soldiers pay them a suitable respect and carefully attend religious exercises. The blessings and protection of heaven are at all times necessary, but especially so in times of public distress and danger. The general hopes and trusts that every officer and man will endeavor so to live and act as become a Christian soldier. The dearest rights and liberty of his country he is defending. The several brigades are to be drawn up this evening on their respective parades at 6 o'clock when the Declaration of Congress showing the grounds and reasons for this measure is to be read with an audible voice. The general hopes this important event will serve as a fresh incentive to every officer and soldier to act with fidelity and courage, as knowing that now the peace and safety of his country depends under God solely on the success of our arms, and that he is now in the service of a state possessed of sufficient power to reward his merit and advance him to the highest honors of a free country. The Declaration of Independence in Congress, July 4th, 1776. The unanimous declaration of the 13 United States of America. When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them. A decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That whenever any form of government becomes so destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it and to institute new government, laying its foundations on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudence indeed will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light or transient causes. And accordingly, all experience has shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, if this is a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government, to provide new guards for their future security. Such has been the patient sufferance of these colonies, and such is now the necessity which constrains them to alter their former systems of government. The history of the present King of Great Britain is a history of repeated injustices and usurpations, all having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states. To prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world. He has refused his assent to laws. He has dissolved representative houses repeatedly. He has obstructed the administration of justice. He has made judges dependent on his will alone. He has kept among us in times of peace standing armies without the consent of our legislatures. He has subjected us to a jurisdiction foreign to our constitutions, for quartering large bodies of armed troops among us, for cutting off our trade with all parts of the world, for imposing taxes on us without our consent, for depriving, in many cases, the benefits of trial by jury. He has abducted governments here by declaring us out of his protection and waging war against us. He has plundered our seas, ravaged our coasts, burnt our towns, and destroyed the lives of our people. He is at this time transporting large armies of foreign mercenaries to complete the works of death, desolation, and tyranny already begun with the circumstances of cruelty. He has exercised domestic insurrections among us, and we must therefore acquiesce in the necessity which denounces our separation and hold them as we hold the rest of mankind, enemies in war, friends in peace. We, therefore, the representatives of the United States of America, in General Congress assembled, appealing to the Supreme Judge of the world for the rectitude of our intentions, do, in the name and by the authority of the good people of these colonies, solemnly publish and declare that these united colonies are, and of right ought to be, free and independent states, that they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved, and that as free and independent states, they have the authority to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce, and do all other acts and things which independent states may of right do. And for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. In a letter from John Adams to Abigail on 3 July 1776, in which he makes reference to this declaration, he writes to Abigail in part, "I am apt to believe it will be celebrated by succeeding generations as the great anniversary festival. It ought to be commemorated as the day of deliverance by solemn acts of devotion to God Almighty. It ought to be solemnized with pomp and parade, with shows, games, sports, guns, bells, bonfires, and illuminations from one end of this continent to the other, from this time forward, forever." You will think me transported with enthusiasm, but I am not. I am well aware of the toil and blood and treasure that it will cost us to maintain this declaration and support and defend these states. Yet through all the gloom I can see the rays of ravishing light and glory. I can see that the end is more than worth all the means, and that posterity will triumph in the day's transaction, trusting in God that we will not regret it. Mr. Adams' words proved to be more than prophetic. At the Battle of Brooklyn, also known as the Battle of New York, the Americans would suffer 5,500 casualties. By war's end, 27,000 Americans would lose their lives in the fight to win our independence as a nation uniquely conceived. The total number of American soldiers who have died in U.S. wars, who have fought to preserve our nation and liberty around the globe, has surpassed 1.1 million soldiers. The price of freedom is great. I would like to conclude with what was His Excellency's final official act as Commander-in-Chief of the Continental Army in 1783, towards the end of that great conflict. I believe that these words of advice and prayer are as relevant today as they were then. And again, this was issued to each of the 13 governors of the states. To each governor, I think it a duty incumbent on me to make this my last official communication, to congratulate you on the glorious events which heaven has been pleased to produce in our favor, to offer my sentiments respecting some important subjects which appear to me to be intimately connected with the tranquility of the United States. The citizens of America, placed in the most enviable condition, they are from this period to be considered as actors on a most conspicuous theater, which seems to be particularly designed by Providence for the display of human greatness and felicity. Heaven has crowned all its other blessings by giving a fairer opportunity for political happiness than any other nation has ever been favored with. At this auspicious period, the United States came into existence as a nation, and if their citizens should not be completely free and happy, the fault will be entirely their own. This is the moment when the eyes of the whole world are turned upon them. This is the moment to establish or ruin their national character forever. There are 4 things which I humbly conceive are essential to the well-being, I may even venture to say to the existence, of the United States as an independent power. Number 1, the indissoluble union of the states under one federal head. Number 2, a sacred regard to public justice, to pay our national debt, and also that owed to the soldier. Number 3, it is most essential to maintain a strong army. Number 4, that the prevalence of that pacific, peaceful, and friendly disposition among the people of the United States, which will induce them to forget their local differences so as to band together for the greater good. These are the pillars on which the glorious fabric of our independence and national character must be supported. I now make it my earnest prayer that God would have you and the state over which you preside in His holy protection, that He would incline the hearts of the citizens to cultivate a spirit of subordination and obedience to government, to entertain brotherly affection and love for one another and for their fellow citizens of the United States at large, and particularly for the soldier who have served in the field, and finally, that He would most graciously be pleased to dispose us all to do justice, to love mercy, and to demean themselves with that charity, humility, and peaceful temper of mind which were the characteristics of the divine author of our blessed religion. Without the practice of these blessed virtues and religious principles, we can never hope to be a happy nation. And finally, we once more live in perilous times. Let us reflect today on the legacy of this great nation as a haven for freedom and opportunity for all people. May we recognize the blood and the treasure that our freedom has cost and recommit our lives to a firm reliance on the help of Almighty God as we strive through hard work and goodwill to overcome the challenges we face and restore national peace and tranquility. The General bids adieu to all the patriotic men and women of goodwill who strive to serve the good of the other in our homes, in our schools, in the workplace, and in the community. God bless you all, and God bless this great nation.
Hi, I'm standing in Ivandale Cemetery, which is located in Somers on Route 100. But behind me is a building where the site of Haights Taverns once stood. Haights Tavern played a very important part in our visit from George Washington and Rochambeau. For you see, after the American Revolution, the last battle down at Yorktown, Virginia was fought. Rochambeau had many thousands of troops that had to travel northward. And a contingency of them spent the night over near Purdy's, and then after they decamped, they came down Route 100, which today is known as the Rochambeau Trail, and it's on the national record. They marched down with Washington, Rochambeau, and other dignitaries, and they had lunch at Samuel Haights Tavern. Now, Samuel Haight was asked by Washington at the beginning of the confrontation with the British, which of course became the American Revolution, to help set up the 3rd Regiment from Westchester. Samuel Haight served in the 3rd Regiment in the battle and also was a captain. And Samuel Haight had a family, and they lived further down on Route 100, or the Rochambeau Trail, and his family operated the tavern for many, many years and had many dignitaries beside Washington and Rochambeau spend their time there. Now, I want you all to listen very carefully because we have the Sons of Hacaliah Bailey. We have one son. It's a musical group based here in Somers, and they will take you to different places of historic interest here in Somers, playing the national anthem. Have a good July 4th, and don't forget Samuel Haight.